Hi, everyone. It's Dibblee. I'm your host of Frock Off Television, along with my amazing partner, Sue Ferreira. And Sue is the big brain behind Frock Talk. She is all things technical, techie, and all things about creating global awareness and knowledge. Sue is a bit under the weather today, but I'm going to ask her to do a quick intro of herself because all I can spout off is that she's amazing, wonderful, and she's a big brain. But I'm going to hand it over to Sue for a second to share a bit more.
And I grew up as a Brit. I'm sure you can tell from my my accent, even if it is a bit stuck with cold today. Joe and I have been sharing everything recently, including colds. But yeah, and as a Brit, we were never taught to say nice things about ourselves. So I now pay Jo a vast amount of money, so she will say nice things about me. Anyway, yeah, I'm Sue Ferreira. I've been a physician until a couple of weeks ago. I've just worked part-time for the last couple of years, but I will never, ever retire. I've got too much to do and life is too much fun. And I see so many folks who either aren't having fun or who are going into their later years financially and emotionally strapped. And that's my mission in my life, to unstrap them and get them to enjoy their later years and frequently to give back, because this is this thing that comes in when you're older. You suddenly find you actually want to leave a legacy, and I want to help them do that. So Jo is great at that too. And I'm going to stop now because of this cold, but we're going to go ahead and we're really going to enjoy this interview with Jen. So toodle for me. I'm going to mute myself now so you don't have to hear anything from me anymore.
Thanks, Sue. Thank you so much. And today, again, it's funny how segues just lead into the whole piece. Like, isn't it amazing how when you're on the right track and you're in the right place, the most amazing things happen? And what a legacy that Sue has left already in terms of saying, this is how we get our message out globally. And this interview today will help ensure that we share and we broadcast more about what needs to happen in the world. And my dear friend, oh my goodness, today what a treat we are in for, because Jen Violi, who is my friend, my mentor, and the reason that Frock Off Living Undisguised has seen such tremendous success is Jen Violi. There is absolutely no other person that I could attribute that amount of success to. Jen helped me unleash my story, and I can't really do Jen justice in terms of her many accomplishments, and I've asked her to share those with you today, because when I talk about Jen, I talk straight from my heart, also from a position of knowing what happens when you work with an expert, a person who is a change agent herself and who is talented beyond words. You'll hear me often say, Jen makes words sound delicious. Much like warm butter on what I like to refer to as French toast, one of my favorite meals, that warm butter and the syrup as it drizzles down. When Jen speaks, that's how it sounds. It sounds like warm butter enveloping French toast. No pressure, Jen. But Jen, before we get going on that, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself in terms of how you arrived and what you've done so far?
For the last 41 years, I have.
Yeah, in 1 minute or less. Just kidding.
Well, thank you for having me here today. This is it's a gift to be here with you, as always. And no fair making me cry before I start the interview. I am, I'm a writer. I'm author of Putting Makeup on Dead People. It's a novel. And I am also a developmental editor and a writing coach and mentor for seasoned and soulful people who have stories they're ready to unleash, like Jo. And I love that Sue used the word unstrap people, because I feel like, this is just another shade of unstrapping. This is about unleashing and letting your story out in the world, your healing story that the world needs.
Mm-hmm. And what about your awards, Miss Jen? You failed to mention those.
Well, Putting Makeup on Dead People was a finalist for the Oregon Book Awards, and also a bulletin for the Center of Children's Books Blue Ribbon book, and finalist for a few other awards too.
That is awesome. And you're one of those people that actually really walks her talk. Like when you talk about unleashing and helping us. And, you know, if the word of the day is unstrap, let's go with that. You really keep the person's voice intact, allowing them to share their story at the highest level. And that to me is a gift that is so unique to you. I met other developmental editors in my process, but there was something about you, Jen, that I knew I was safe in letting go of my story with you. And that to me is, you made this process, even as I talk about it now, I still get goosebumps because I remember our first conversation. But a question I have for you is, were you always in this world? Were you always doing this? Was this just something that naturally happened? Or did you have to overcome some barriers or some obstacles to get to where you are today?
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, what I'm doing now, all of it has always been in me. I've always had a love for stories. In losing my dad as a 14-year-old starting high school, my second day of high school, my relationship with stories shifted, because then I started to understand that stories weren't just fun for me, but they also could save me. Yeah. That there was something in them that was healing and that could take me from one place to another place. And, you know, I often talk about losing my dad as an experience that really turned me inside out. So all that was on the inside of me suddenly was on the outside. And in learning to bear witness to myself and the process of healing and going from grief to joy again, I've learned to do that for other people too. And I find it crucial in my life to create sanctuary for people. And I love that you said you felt safe working with me, because that's what I want. You know, I want people to come and say, this is a safe place for me to let my voice out and be fully me, which is what the world needs, because don't be half of yourself or a quarter of yourself, you know.
No, I totally agree. And I love, you know, how genuine and raw you are. And that's what allows us to be so raw and real in your presence without any kind of constraints. You know, I remember having conversation with you saying, Jen, if it doesn't serve the reader, I don't need it to be in the finished work, because really otherwise it would just be Joe's diary. And there was enough stuff there to keep us all busy. It was War and Peace times 10. I think when I sent it to you, it was this high. And in the end, what you created by using what I had shared was a beautiful piece that I feel proud of. But I think also you alluded to something that's really critical for myself and even for yourself when you talk about, you know, when your dad was taken so early in your life as well. Would you agree then that a catalyst for unleashing our stories is something that is either both joyfully traumatic, if there's such a way of saying that, or sadly traumatic, that it takes something to put us maybe kind of the tipping point? Is that a fair assumption?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and those end up being the people that I work with, the people who, and the way I like to put it is they're turning scars into gifts. They're taking their pain and they're turning it into purpose and passion and possibility. I mean, that's exactly how I'd describe you. You know, you've taken this, you know, what we could call life compost that a lot of crap, and you have let it bloom into something beautiful and change and transform and expand. So absolutely. I mean, from that place of pain and loss and being broken open, beautiful stuff can sprout up if you pay attention and put your heart into it and, you know, move forward.
Thank you. I totally agree. Think about a time then for yourself, because obviously that was a catalyst in your own life. But has there ever been a time where you've kind of thrown caution to the wind and said, I'm not letting anything hold me back ever again. I know that I have something big to unleash in my life. Tell us about a time like that.
Sure. Well, you know, the first one that comes to mind is definitely moving to Portland, Oregon, where I live now. And, you know, I traveled from outside of DC. So I was living in Maryland at the time. So it was a full cross-country trip. And my marriage ended on the way at a truck stop in Idaho. And, I got to Portland, that happened. I lost the long distance job that I had still in Maryland doing marketing work that was paying the bills, but did not pay my heart. It didn't fulfill me. And weirdly enough, so, I guess you could say joyfully traumatic. This is an example for you. I had just got a book deal. So I had sold my novel, and this was my a lifelong dream come true. So all of this was happening at once. So here I am in this pile of joyful trauma and trauma, whatever we want to call it. And, I could have gone and looked for a traditional job again and tried to fit into all of the ways that I knew I was supposed to fit in. But somehow this experience of being broken in relationship and broken in job and, broken in the idea of who I was in the world, I said, well, why wouldn't now, when I have this total blank slate, why wouldn't I do what I've always wanted to do and put all of the best pieces of me together and offer them?
Wow.
And that's when I started my business. So that was then.
That, I think, is the story of so many entrepreneurs, when it's like it's a perfect storm of events going on. And, I don't make lightly of anybody going through divorce. And, but I love how you say it, ended at a truck stop. I think that's a book. That title, it ended at a truck stop. Just for some reason, it just, I get goosebumps. That doesn't mean anything because I'm kind of wacky. But I do think it's its own book. But I do think these perfect storms create the opportunities in our life to shed the things that have been holding us back. Albeit they may not be, the timing let's just call it, may suck. But it is what gives us, I think, it's kind of a leap or fall backwards. You either move forward, you take that leap of faith, not knowing. A book deal, a marriage crumbling, a move across, those are all big things, Jen, all at the same time, as you know. And it could have went the other way. You could have crumbled. You could have just conformed. We talk about the frock conformity and not even knowing where to go next. But you didn't do those things. You decided to put it all on the line. And I think that is why also, as someone who's worked with you, I feel so safe, not just about the book, but because I know you get it. I know you've walked that path. You yourself have done it. If there was one thing then in that whole process, if there was one thing you would do differently, what would it be?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think I would answer that at this point, I wouldn't do anything differently. I let myself go through what I needed to go through. The first month I was in Portland, the first year I was in Portland, I cried all the time. And, I did yoga every day one of the first months I was here. And I just cried. I wept through the process and I moved through it. So, I guess I would say I would still want to move through it. If something like that would happen again, and it probably will, I hope that I will be able to move through it. Just keep moving. And so I don't look back at this point with regret, because I was for a long time looking back with regret. But now it's funny, just this past weekend, I had a conversation with someone and realized I would actually describe that as one of the best years of my life.
And that is the gem. Is that not the gold? No matter, when you said human compost pile, I agree. That is exactly what it's like. It's all fermenting, and it gets stinky at times. I'm not quite as eloquent as you are, but I can call it what it is. And what it is a sipping pile of, and yet out comes the most amazing lessons. And you know what else I find, and I don't know if this is true for yourself, but when we've been through something that's traumatic, whether it's whether it's so big, whether it's blissful, or whether it is sad, because equal extremes, right? Highs and lows. We learn things in those moments that we can only learn in those moments when we're in our deepest despair or our most joyful moments. There's a nugget that comes out of those things. And those nuggets are what take us through to the next time, whatever they may be. And obviously it's the despair that we need those lessons. Not we need those lessons, but those lessons help us to arrive at the next place. And I love when you talk about, coming through it, like just going through it, because there is no other way to get to that life that we want, that we crave, but to go through whatever that is, that we're in that moment, So thinking about that then, and thinking about where you've come from, how do you see what you're doing now evolving even more? Where do you see yourself being and going? What are your aspirations and your goals that you will now take these lessons, these amazing gems, and rock them to the next phase? Where will you go with those?
Well, this past year, really honing in on that word sanctuary has been big. Mm-hmm. So all future goals that I have really are rooted in that, in creating story sanctuary for people. So, in a very tangible way in the future, definitely there will be a retreat center, a writing sanctuary place for people to come to. And, in the meantime, I have other projects that are cooking and brewing. In the fall, I'm launching an online course called Discover the Book You're Meant to Write, which is going to be another sanctuary. And the goal in putting it there online is that it can go more widely. It can stretch out to, people that don't have to be in the same room with me to experience it. So those are some of the pieces of my big vision for moving forward.
That is so awesome. It gives more opportunity, the chance to, for others to be able to work with you. And for myself, like I said, I will never forget from where I came to where I am now. So Jen, with all the cool things that you've done, and I know they're plentiful, where do you see yourself going, and how are you going to continue to share your message and your gifts in the world? Because without that, we limit ourselves. So where do you see yourself going next, my dear?
Well, within the last year, I've gotten a lot of clarity about the word sanctuary as a way to describe what I do. And so anything that I'm going to grow forward and up and out into the world is going to be rooted in that word and creating sanctuary for stories. So one tangible way that I want to do that is to have a retreat center. So a place that people can come and, be able to work on their stories and have it be a safe, nurturing, creative environment. So definitely that's part of it. In the fall, I am launching an online course, Discover the Book You're Meant to Write. And the goal in that is to say that there it is for anyone, anywhere in the world that wants to take it. And so it's another way for me to say, how do I get this work out more widely in the world and create more safe places so that more stories can emerge, because the world definitely needs them. It's hungry for healing stories.
So true. I mean, it's amazing just seeing what's happened for myself and others that I know have worked with you. It's a healing process for everyone involved. I would say for myself, the process of going, writing my story and having your guidance and knowing that you were there beside me, shoulder to shoulder. It didn't matter if you were sitting next to me. So the idea of you being able to launch something that's going to allow more, virtually to have you, just like this. This is how we initially started as well with Skype, right? That's how we started. It's not about necessarily, I love to squeeze you in person, but just having you and knowing you were near me and being able to see made such a big impact on my life. And those, I know others that have worked with you that say the exact same thing. And your gifts and your talents. And I am so excited. I know we get an in-person, Jen, in October here on Vancouver Island. So I'm very excited about that. But I also want to say that, I know it's very exciting. I also want to say that it's because you allowed yourself to put yourself out there. I mean, you could have stayed in that position you were in. You could have stayed back. So I guess I would say to you, for those that are watching this right now, what piece of advice would you give them?
In terms of, like if they're in a stuck place or? Yeah.
Sorry. In moving forward and knowing, knowing in your heart of hearts that if there was one thing, if only one thing you could leave people with that would, really showcase the Jenness of you, my Jen, what would that one piece of advice be?
Well, I think it is something about moving.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the piece. I put together that five simple moves to free the stuck writer.
Yeah.
And I think it goes for the stuck human too, to say that when you're stuck, I mean, the thing that I would say to anybody who feels like they're stuck either as a writer or a human being is congratulations. You're doing it right. If you're being a good human, you're being a good writer, because what happens is we get stuck. And so the thing to do when you're stuck is to move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And it sounds so simplistic, but it isn't, because when you are stuck, it feels like concrete. It feels like there's no way out. I mean, not just, as you said, whether it's writing or as a human being, when we get stuck in our life, its own version of a tipping point, because if you're stuck or freaked out, then you know you're onto something really big, at least in my experience. Mm-hmm. When I've been in a place of darkness, that's when I know something amazing is going to happen, just not always in that moment.
Well, totally. And, I would add to that I'm not saying you need to make some grand leap when you're stuck, because usually when you're stuck, you can't do that. So it's thinking about small moves that begin to get you somewhere that you didn't expect. So maybe the movement is breathing. Mm-hmm. That's it. Maybe it's blinking. So it can be small but mighty, for sure.
Well, I totally agree. And, you are so much a part of my Frockalicious life. Without you, Jen, I would, as I said, I have to call it the way I see it. And without you, I would not be where I am. And not only did we launch Frock Off Living Undisguised #1, we've now launched this one, Frock Off Living Undisguised, the Freedom version, which contains the original and your story, and your story of unleashing and unfrocking, if you will. The whole reason we started Frock Talk Television was to share stories of others that have been through their own. And seriously, Jen, I think that is a book in the making, in terms of the truck stop, in its own way. At least I love the title. I think that the beauty of this is the community of the membership of 12 for 12 and what they're doing. These ladies that you're seeing, they're all change agents. And Jen, thank you so much for the gift that you've included for the viewers. We'll be making sure that we put the links for how to get in touch with you, your web information, everything will be there. But mostly, Jen, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me, I'm not going to get emotional today, for allowing me to share my story, to unleash myself, and for sharing, being so generous with your time, your talent, and for sharing with those that are watching today what this looks like to unleash yourself, to be free, and to live the life that we dream, to live what we call the Frockalicious life. So, Jen, is there anything you'd like to add to what we're saying here before we go?
Well, I love you.
There's that. Mutual love.
And, I think what you see with Jo right now is someone whose heart is wide open and available. And I know that people feel it when they see you on video. I know that people feel it when they see you in person. And I guess you're this living, breathing, beautiful example of what happens when you share your story with the world. It's contagious. So people are healed in the presence of you and your story. So Jo's not the only one who can do that, I guess, is what I would add to it. And she would be the first to tell you the exact same thing. So you can do that too. So if you feel that little seedling in your heart and know that there's something that you need to say out loud, maybe for the first time, maybe this can be your little nudge to say, take that step, be in that movement, even if it's breathing or blinking or one of those, small things. Do that. And magic can happen. Magic like this.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful. Did I mention she makes words sound delicious? So thank you again, Jen, to my partner, Sue, for taking the time and spending the time with us and sharing your genius. I love you both, and I hope all of you have a frockalicious day. And until next time, take care, and remember, tell those ill-serving frocks to frock off. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.